Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Going to be casting a game for you today between QXC and EG's Idra. So Idra, of course, being the Zerg player, and QXC being our red Terran player. Terran versus Zerg here in Metalopolis. Definitely looking forward to this matchup. Obviously, games with Idra and QXC both tend to be exciting. So having them both in the same arena, well, holy hell, that's going to be a good old time. I'd have to say, should be a great matchup. This is a 2-game series, so I'm bringing you going to be 2 games here between these 2 players. So right after this, I'll be casting the second one, and after that, I'm shipping off to work for the day, and then later in the evening, I'll be coming out with some strategy videos because I promised that for you. I was gonna try to do it this morning before work, but that's just not possible. So I'm going to be coming out with at least one. And I'm really going to try to come out with about 2. So we'll see if we can get that done today. That'd be fantastic. Already, QXC deciding not to go for that wall off quite as of yet. Actually, just going to be starting off with the depot at the side of his base here, right next to these mineral patches. So a little block off right here, stopping Zerglings from running through this particular area. But you do see a lot more players actually going just with the heavier fortified buildings when it comes to wall off, just to help prevent against a Baneling bust at some point in the future. Obviously, this professional level play, you don't typically see kind of a one-base all-in Baneling bust. That's something you definitely don't ever really see from Idra. Idra, of course, being a very macro-focused player, you can see here, in fact, going for hatch pool as opposed to pool hatch, opening with the one base. So very economy, very macro focused. Idra is that kind of player. And look at this, QXC going to be starting off with that 2 racks build. You can see no refinery yet, even though he is past that 13 supply mark. Typically that refinery would be out by now if you were going for kind of a standard fare. So going to be going for some 2 racks early pressure, probably just because he knows how macro focused Idra is. Going to be trying to hope to counteract that by providing a little bit of early game pressure, putting his thumb down basically on Idra's expansion and trying to knock it out if at all possible. That's the goal there. Orbital Command going to be making its way on in as well. He's going to want to get that second depot sometime in the very near future, and there we go. QXC coming down with that second depot, and here comes the pressure right now. Moving out with that 1 SCV. Scouting SCV is going to be there to assist as well. Idra, of course, scouting with that Overlord, going to see if there's any sort of bunker placement. Now, he is actually moving it right now, so I wonder if he's going to possibly miss it. That is actually quite possible. No, that vision there from the Overlord just a bit too much. He's going to see this coming, and he's fully aware right now of the fact that this pressure is on the way. Now you can see at the moment too, his response of course is quite proper, bringing down a couple of drones, usually about 3 to 4 is what you typically see. Going to be pulling off that SCV for the time being. Here comes the Marines right now, and this is going to make it a little bit easier to go ahead and go about doing this. 2 more Marines in the way as well, besides this one up here. Now that was canceled. You did in fact see that. He's still going to try to apply pressure, obviously without the bunker, not going to be quite as effective, but with some good micro, you can still do some damage, force the creation of Zerglings. You can see that's happening right now, and that's actually quite a good thing, because that means Idra at this moment is not droning up. And here we go, going to be trying to actually drop the bunker right here. Quite interesting. I mean, this is obviously going to provide that constant pressure. It's not going to stop Idra from pushing out at some point. He could go up the ramp, and here we go, trying to get that full surround, and this is exactly what you're going to see Zerg players do. This is kind of the best way to try to prevent this from happening, forcing away those Marines with the Zerglings, and then getting us around there on that bunker, killing the SCV. So great response there by Idra. That's precisely what you want to do. Now, typically, oh, look at that, manages to get it up, that one last SCV, but actually going ahead and salvaging that, and he does get it before the Zerglings kill it, so he did get his resources back at the very least. But there were so many Zerglings that even with it up, he wasn't going to be able to get his Marines in and kill all those Zerglings before they took it out. And look at this, great follow-up here by QXC. This is the type of follow-up that I personally would like to do, is just going for that expansion after that harassment. You know, you definitely set the Zerg player behind an economy, if nothing more than forcing those creation of Zerglings. Because typically at this stage in the game, we would not be seeing this many Zerglings on the board, because they would have been mainly drones and just a few Zerglings. And early game too, before that metabolic boost comes up, just some good old regular Marine micro is going to be enough to push back some Zerglings, as long as you have some decent numbers for those Marines. And you can see here again, Idra is being forced to come out with some more Zerglings, and this is exactly not what he wants to do. Taking a look at the income tab, we can see Idra just barely ahead of Harvester count, even though he's on 2 base. And here we go, another Marine push, going to be moving on in, doing what he can to snipe these units, deciding at this point time to pull back right now. Metabolic boost just about finished, and internally pretty sure QXC has that timing down, so he knows that that's on the way, and he wants to get out of there before that actually takes place. Now, factory coming down over here for QXC, so instead of going completely bio heavy, he's actually going to be switching into some heavy factory tech here. So quite interested to see precisely what he intends on doing. He could be going for tank or my gosh, even something like Thor's. That'd be great, huh? You don't see too much Thor play this early in the game. At least we're at 7 minutes in the game right now, so it would be pretty cool if he was pumping out double Thors out of those bad boys. We'll see what happens, though. Dropping down this bunker right now, and again, these Zerglings with the metabolic boost on the board, definitely going to be very effective against these non-stim packed, non-combat shield Marines. So going to want to be careful at this point in terms of pushing out, leaving his base. Not going to be the best decision. Now at this point, you can see here Zergling run-bys aren't going to be the most effective thing because they're going to take a lot of damage from that bunker. They do still have the opportunity of snaking around here and harassing the economy, but with Marine placement in this area too, you can help deny that, or at least prevent that. Placing a second bunker over here, yeah, I mean, it's an option, but probably not the best, and that's precisely why you don't see a lot of players do that. And look at this, we're actually going to be seeing some Blue Flame Hellions, so very interesting there on his part. We can see Baneliness coming out on the way. I'm going to assume the assumption, right, is the fact that obviously Idra knows that right now QXC is Marine heavy, so maybe he's assuming that this Baneling's Nest is going to be coming down, and some microed Hellions against Speedling Banelings are going to do very well, especially with that blue flame. Also, of course, being able to try to sneak in with the quick speed, that super fastness of those Hellions, and trying to do some damage to the economy of Idra. That would, of course, be a great idea. We can see that Spire on the way as well, so it looks like we're going to be seeing pretty standard fare from Idra when it comes to an anti-Terran build with that Speedling Baneling Muta. Obviously an incredibly effective build at harassing, so should be great to see that come into play. Now QXC again coming out with these Blue Flame Hellions. He's really going to need to do a lot of damage. This is quite an investment right now, going double factory and also researching that Blue Flame. Definitely a big investment, so he is going to need to do some damage with it. We'll see how that push goes when it eventually happens. Here we go, Idra coming out with that third base because he did see, of course, that QXC is on his second, and again, the general mentality of a Zerg player, want to be one base above your opponent. And look at that, actually coming out with another hatchery here for that extra larva. Also that evolution chamber making its way down, get some upgrades for his units there, going to be good. And here we go, some units moving across the board for QXC, and it is in fact those Hellions. Is he going to be snaking around? Not going to be just moving straight into this direction. Now at this point, Idra, of course, is going to spot this. This is really going to depend on how easily Idra can get a surround. If he can surround those Hellions, he's going to be in a good spot. And there we go, trying to get that surround, trying to block them off. That hatchery making it a little more difficult, but that Blue Flame just absolutely obliterating those units. Those Queens, of course, not the best target there for those Hellions. Hellions are very ineffective when it comes to armored units, and those Queens are not armored. but what they do have Jesus, Dennis. Oh man, what they do have is I mean they do have the one armor, right? So that's good. They've got one armor, but they're not a light unit, and that's kind of the point, basically. Not being the light unit, the like a Marine, a Hellion. Oh, what the F am I talking about? Jesus. Sorry. I just woke up, so yeah, I'm casting this straight out of bed. But not being a light unit like a Zergling or a Marine or a Zealot, that's what Hellions are most effective against, and as well as those workers. Queens, Marauders, Stalkers, none of those Hellions, those are not primary targets for the Hellions. So anyways, that's a huge rant just because I can't talk properly. And here we go, push coming down right now, wants to stay away from the Muta. Speedling's Baneling going to be trying to roll in, take out those Marines. Nice micro away. The big problem is, though, as soon as those Marines stop shooting, those Mutalisks just swoop on in and do massive amounts of damage. And that's basically the exact tactic you want to use against a Marine heavy army. You roll in those Speedlings and Banelings and force the Marine micro to pull them back, and then as such, at that very same time, if you move in with those Mutalisks, you're going to be able to swipe up those non-shooting Marines. That's the theory there. Surprised he's continuously running away from just the Mutalisks. Would have liked to see those Marines turn around and do some damage here. And now Mutalisks are in the base. Turrets coming up just in the nick of time. Going to force them back. Just massive amounts of DPS against the Mutalisks. Really not worth taking heavy losses to something like a turret, especially since early game, it takes quite some time until you have that nice big cloud of Mutalisks. It takes quite some time to drop a turret, and you take heavy losses as a result, especially if any other threatening units are in the area. I would say one big problem thus far for QXC is the fact that he hasn't really done a lot of damage. He did force those Zerglings early game, but aside from that, haven't seen much economic damage. He tried to move in, did manage to kill a bunch of Zerglings, but didn't really get any work done on the drones. And now at this point, Idra, on 3 bases right now, working on his 4th at the moment, having Mutalisks on the board. He's starting to work on that giant Muta cloud, and he's just going to be flying around and sniping things off and forcing these Marines to run all over the place. And this is going to be a little bit of a difficult situation for QXC to deal with. You can see here trying to move into this third, but that threat of Mutalisk is going to force a thin spread of these Marines, and having a thin spread of your units is kind of primary pickings for the Mutalisk, because they can just fly every which way, and again, their quick speed, their mobility allows them to do that quite easily. We are seeing also trying to amass a little bit of a force here of Speedlings and Banelings right in the center. Idra doing a good job of maintaining map control, spreading that creep out, having the Xel'Naga towers, Overlord spawning everywhere. Again, you take a look at a Zerg player vision in some games, and it feels like map hacks. Just taking a look at that, he can see well over half the map. Going to be fully aware of anything that's coming from his opponent. That's a good tactic there as a Zerg player to be prepared for this stuff. Going to be trying to snipe this reactor, cut back drastically on the production of those Marines, and if he can grab the barracks too, that'd be great. I'm not sure if he's going to have enough time. He's doing pretty well. Again, wants to try to stay away from those turrets. Massive DPS, so pulling back at this moment. Moving forward with a bunch of his Marines right now, and this is the problem right here. Now all these Marines are over here, so Idra can just fly right around and go somewhere else. And actually, he's going to be retreating, but he could have quite easily swooped around over here, maybe done some damage over here. Marines come over here, go over here, do some damage over here. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that you really have to worry about against a Zerg player going Muta. And here's that ground force going to be, of course, forcing that Marine production from QXC to handle those Mutalisks, and then, of course, going to be counteracting that with Speedling and Baneling. That's the, again, that's the idea in theory. Sniping down those SCVs, trying to build those turrets. They're going to delay that at least a little bit. And look at this Death Cloud really starting to pile up right here. Taking a look at that unit counter station, we have 19 Mutalisks on the board at the moment, coming out with 5 more as well. Also getting some upgrades there for his units, working his way all the way up to a hive. And look, so many Marines. Great, great, great. Marines are awesome, but look at this. Now, in dealing with the tanks as well, this is obviously okay. So I get Marines to counter Mutas. He gets Speedling Banelings to counter my Marines. I get tanks to counter Speedling Baneling. Great. Now, in theory, what you want to do as a Zerg player, so in Idra's behalf, is he needs to use the Speedlings, Banelings, of course, on the Marines, and then simultaneously sweep up with the Mutas to pick off the tanks. If you can, again, converge as one big group, you're all set on a big attack coming down over here, trying to take out as many SCVs as possible, targeting that turret, but the splash damage, of course, hitting those SCVs, and manages to sneak away before taking much of any damage. Stim going down, they're going to try to take a few pop shots, and does manage to kill at least 1 or 2 of those. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, that's kind of the theory now. On the flip side here for QXC, essentially what he's going to want to do is just make sure those Marines stay as close to those tanks as possible, and that's going to allow him to protect them from that Muta sniping. And then once the Speedlings and Banelings try to roll in, they're going to take splash from that. From the tank fire there. But this is the problem right here, especially without a lot of harassment throughout the course of the game. It's just the amount of forces that a Zerg player can amass. Lots and lots of Speedlings and Banelings. So it's going to really depend on his tank placement and the spread of his Marines and how effectively he can protect both. But those are a lot of Mutalisks. So here we go. Big engagement. Going to be coming down, ringing forward right now. And those tanks were not in siege. And that is incredibly unfortunate right now for QXC. He lost pretty much everything because of that. He wasn't able to do any damage to those Speedlings and those Banelings before they were mopping in right on the Marines. He just wasn't prepared for that at all, just moving around, being a little too mobile there with those tanks. And that is, of course, the great threat. And you can see Idra capitalizing on that, and so many losses there for QXC. That was really bad. Taking a look at that unit lost. Okay. So I guess, I mean, you can see the number of units lost, obviously, are higher for Idra. He's got less expensive, larger forces. But as far as resources lost, we can see that QXC is at the deficit there. And look at this again, just this continued expansion here. And you know, in terms of harassment here, as a Terran player, what do you typically see? Well, you see things like drops. You see a couple medevacs with Stim Marines trying to take out expansions. That's the best type of harassment mid to late game that you could do against a Zerg player. But I guess the real concern right now for QXC is just this vast cloud of Mutalisks. He doesn't want to lose a turret, doesn't want to lose a medevac en route that just gets immediately sniped by this cloud. But even with that said, you got to do something, and this is the problem here. Again, QXC just not doing anything to Idra. He's just letting him take map controls, letting him do whatever he wants, and now he is finally working his way up to Broodlords, and this is not a good position for him to be in at this moment. He really doesn't have a lot to deal with Broodlords, and I know I say that and it looks like, well, of course everything here can hit Broodlords, pretty much, the Marines and the Thors. The problem is it's the Broodlords in the back with those Speedling Banelings in the front. That's the scary part, because you can't really get up to touch the Broodlords, and they're just gonna absolutely mop up. The other thing too is that with these tanks in play, splash damage attacking the broodlings, they're actually going to end up hitting his own units, so QXC is going to take losses from those broodlings. But look at this big ball. I don't even know if these broodlords are going to come into play here. Moving down in this direction, not the best position for QXC, getting a full surround right now, doing what he can to magic box those Mutalisk Idra, trying to spread them out and protect them from those Thors, and that's the end of the game right now. There is absolutely nothing at this moment that QXC has that he can deal with this. I mean, this is just a massive army at this point. Hasn't done enough damage whatsoever. Just finally trying to move on to his 4th. You can see Idra right now sitting with 6 bases, so again, a whole lot of trouble right now. Trying to target fire down those Broodlords with those Vikings, but here come in the Mutas to save the day. Wants to stay away from those missile turrets, so he's actually going to take a lot of losses right there. Big push coming out of the front as well. Doing what he can, trying to move up and repair that bunker, but no, it was too late. Those Zerglings did just drop it too quick, and look at this. Idra is just devastating the main base here of QXC. These are all of his production buildings. He's down right now to just 2 factories and 1 starport. He's got the starports coming in here, but there is the GG. So QXC getting just out macroed here and a little bit mopped up from Idra. Again, that really good early game pressure, forcing that creation of Zerglings, but we needed some sort of follow-up. He did try for that Hellion harassment. Remember seeing him move in over here, but didn't end up actually doing any economic damage. And then from that point forward, QXC just pretty much didn't really leave his base. No dropping took place. And again, understand, yes, okay, dropping's hard with a lot of Mutalisks on the board, but something needs to happen, and that's kind of the point. Something needs to happen. You can't ever let this Zerg player do this. Idra, good job on your half. QXC, a little more dropping, that'd be great. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Anyways, this has been Force from Force Strategy Gaming. Hopefully you enjoyed this game. Moving on to game number 2 between these two players, and as always, keep watching and keep owning.